Hello, my name is Joel Sexton. Some of you might know me from Pal Talk with the nick Joel underscore in Christ 22. Um, in this video, I want to respond to a objection I've recently heard, an objection to the preterist interpretation of the book of Revelation. The objection is pretty much saying that, the book of Revelation cannot be dealing with the judgment of Jerusalem in AD 70 because there's so many details in the book of Revelation. You see all the judgment passages from Revelation 6, the seals, the trumps, the vial and bowl judgments. There's too many details for this to be one judgment, the destruction of Jerusalem, the harlot in AD 70. So I just want to make a couple quick points when it comes to this argument, and I think it doesn't really have any merit. The first point I want to make is that if you look at the book of Ezekiel, all commentators agree in the book of Ezekiel, the first 24 chapters of Ezekiel, Ezekiel is shown one judgment, the judgment upon Jerusalem in 586 BC when Nebuchadnezzar and the Babylonians took them in for the 70-year captivity. So you have one judgment and 24 chapters with unbelievable detail describing this judgment. Israel is looked upon as human waste, feces. That's how wicked she became in her idolatry. You see 4 living creatures, 4 thrones. You see Israel as a cooking pot. All these great apocalyptic images and visions and language and detail, and yet Ezekiel in the first 24 chapters is speaking of and seeing one judgment, wrath coming upon Jerusalem in 586 BC. So are we to argue that, Ezekiel can't be speaking of just one judgment in the first half of his book, 24 whole chapters, 1 through 24, because there's so much detail, and yet all commentators agree that Ezekiel is speaking of one judgment in chapters 1 through 24, the 586 BC judgment upon Jerusalem. Another point is the book of Jeremiah. I think probably the first 22, 23, maybe 25 chapters of the book of Jeremiah. He's a contemporary prophet of Ezekiel. He sees one judgment coming. The first half of Jeremiah, 20 some odd verses, is speaking of one judgment. Again, 586 BC. So we see some of these prophets like Ezekiel and Jeremiah, which are speaking of the coming destruction of Jerusalem in the 6th century. They have altogether probably 50 chapters, 20 some chapters each of just one judgment. And so that argument falls apart. We see Revelation has 22 chapters, and who's to say that's not just one judgment? The second point I'd like to make when it comes to that is that if you look in Revelation, the second point I want to make, the seals, the trumpets, and the vial judgments, or the bowl judgments, Revelation chapter 6 through 19, is the same judgment being repeated over and over again. Revelation chapter 6, under the 6th seal, you have the day of the Lord. Revelation chapter 11, under the trumpets, near the end of the trumpet, 6th or 7th trumpet, what do you have? You have the day of the Lord, the resurrection and the time of the kingdom. Revelation chapter 16, under the bowl judgments, the 6th or 7th bowl, you have the day of the Lord, the battle of Armageddon. So just because we see all these judgments being repeated over and over, it doesn't mean this is a progression of different types of judgments. That's a mistake dispensationalists make and historicists make, like the Advents, is that they say, well, this is the 7-year tribulation, the dispensationalists say. You have the seals at the beginning, the trumps in the middle, and the vial judgments at the end of the tribulation. That won't work unless you want to say there's 3 different days of the Lord within a 7-period time during the tribulation period. Okay, so they're all the same judgments, reiterated, repeated over and over. It's not progressive at all. And this is easily demonstrated. Another point when it comes to the seal judgments and the trumps and the vials, the judgments of Revelation 6 through 19, is that heaven and earth is destroyed 3 times. Revelation 6, you have the stars falling from the sky. That's Matthew 24. Them hiding in the rocks and in the caves to cover them, to fall on us from the great wrath of the Lamb. Revelation 11, again, or Revelation chapter 8, sorry, you have earth being destroyed. You go to Revelation 16, what do you see under the vials? Earth being destroyed again. So obviously, you don't have 3 different days of the Lord and 3 different times earth being destroyed. The third point when it comes to the repeats of the judgments of Revelation is you have 2 great earthquakes under the trumpets In Revelation chapter 11, you have a great earthquake. The city is divided. Jerusalem, which all agree, Revelation 11, that great city there is Jerusalem. The city is divided into three. Revelation chapter 16, what do you have? You have Jerusalem, or the great city, being judged again. So we can see easily 3 points why the book of Revelation, the seal judgments, the trumpets, and the vials from Revelation 6 right through 19, the bulk of Revelation is dealing with the same judgment being repeated over and over again. 3 different days of the Lord, Revelation 6, Revelation 11, Revelation 16. 3 different times earth is destroyed, Revelation 6, Revelation 8 and 9, Revelation 16. And 2 times the great city is destroyed and divided into 3 parts, Revelation 11, Revelation 16. So obviously, these can't be 3 different days of the Lord, can't be 3 different destructions of the earth, and it can't be 2 different judgments of the same great city within a 7-year supposed tribulation. So, and a third point, just briefly, if you look at Revelation chapter 5, the Lamb, that's Jesus, is worthy to open the scrolled book. It's sealed and it's written from front to back on both sides. This imagery is taken from Ezekiel chapter 2. Look at the parallels. Revelation chapter 5, then you have the beginning of the judgments, progress right to Revelation chapter 19. You look at Ezekiel chapter 2, 9 and following. Ezekiel is given a scroll, and it's opened, and it's the judgments upon Jerusalem from Ezekiel 2 right through 24. So we see the exact same parallels. The scroll, these judgments, the seals, the trumpets, and the vials are judgments upon the great city of Revelation 11 and Revelation 16 through 19. The great city where our Lord was slain, Revelation 11:8. The great city, Revelation 16:6 and 18:20, that killed the prophets of old. When you see the word prophets, without any qualification or anything like that, when you see just the word prophets, it means Old Testament prophets. And the great city killed the apostles and prophets of Jesus Christ, Revelation 18:24. And she would be guilty of all the blood shed upon the earth. You go to Matthew chapter 23, Jesus says, "O Jerusalem, Jerusalem, ye that stonest the prophets, kill them that are sent unto you. How often I wanted to gather you," so on and so forth. I'm going to send you scribes and wise men. You're going to persecute them from city to city. Luke 11, I'm going to send you apostles and prophets. What does Jesus say in Luke 11:49 and following, and Matthew chapter 23:29 and following? They killed the prophets. You're going to kill my apostles and prophets, Jerusalem. These things are coming upon this generation. Your house is left desolate. That's exact parallel to Revelation 18. Guilty of the blood of the prophets, guilty of the blood of the apostles and prophets, and it's the city where our Lord was slain, Revelation 11:8. So you have 2 Jerusalems in view in the book of Revelation. You have the Jerusalem, the bride. You have the city and the woman, Revelation 21. Revelation 17 and 19, what do you have? The great city and the harlot, the woman. 2 Jerusalems being contrasted. So that's what the book of Revelation is dealing with primarily. Right from 6, right on, judgment of the great city. And once you can see this, I think you can better understand the book of Revelation. Once you can see who the great city is, it establishes preterism beyond any shadow of a doubt. So, again, the point number 1, Ezekiel, just to reiterate it right quickly, Ezekiel has, from chapter 1 to 24 of Ezekiel, you have many different types of details and all these visions and all that, but it's speaking of one judgment on Jerusalem in 586 BC. One judgment, 24 chapters. Okay, and all commentators agree on that. Same with the book of Jeremiah, the first 20-some chapters, one judgment upon Jerusalem and Judah. In the second point, in the book of Revelation, the seals and the trumpets, and the vials, which make up the bulk of Revelation from chapter 6 through 19, they're repeats of the same judgment. Revelation 6, Revelation 11, Revelation 16, the seal, trumpet, and vial. You have the day of the Lord, day of the Lord, day of the Lord. Revelation 6, under the seal. Revelation 8, 9, under the trumpets. Revelation 16, under the vial. You have the destruction of earth. And heaven and earth. Revelation 11, Revelation 16, the great cities divided. So obviously these have to be repeat judgments. You're not going to have 3 different days of the Lord. You're not going to have 3 different destructions of heaven and earth and 2 different destructions of the great city being divided within a 7-year period of time. This devastates the dispensational view of Revelation, which says these are progressive over 7 years of the tribulation. and it destroys the historicist view, which these judgments are spread out over history. It's only the preterist position that I'm aware of that says these are repeat judgments. So those two arguments, the seal, trumpet, and vials, all repeating the same thing over and over again, and the fact that the book of Ezekiel, the first 24 chapters, deals with the one judgment in 586 BC, and yet we're not going to say, well, Ezekiel must have been wrong. He had too many details for one judgment. So that's the objection, and I think the objection doesn't really have any merit. It's been answered. The book of Revelation, even though it has many details, it's focused in on one judgment primarily, and that judgment upon Judea and Jerusalem, the harlot, which was fulfilled in 70 AD. Thanks very much for watching. We're going to do some more videos on that now that we're done refuting Lou Rugg, responding to his YouTube videos. We're going to do some videos affirming preterism, and we're going to refute dispensationalism. The next video we're going to touch on 1 Corinthians chapter 15 and really demonstrate that they put this as a rapture passage because they have to, because of their system, and it actually destroys everything they believe. 1 Corinthians 15, in my opinion, is probably one of the big Achilles heels of dispensationalism, and we're going to demonstrate that in a very next video. Thanks for watching.